Hello and welcome, everyone. This is Gabrielle Celeste, and you're listening to the Spiritual Sisters podcast.
Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. This is Nicole Christine, and we are being joined today by the beautiful Kyla from the Sacred Essentials. Did I get the name correct?
You did. You did so good.
Yay! Thank you, Kyla, for being here. Do you want to introduce yourself also?
Yeah, sure. Thanks so much for having me. The introduction. Yeah, my name is Kyla. I live in beautiful, beautiful Victoria. Still sunny. I'm like holding on to that so much right now.
Mm,
Yeah, I've worked with humans for my whole adult life in various ways, and it's just ever evolving. And we'll get into that, I'm sure, all of the ways that
yes.
it's evolved. Yeah, but just really, really happy to be here.
Well, I'm so happy you're here. We were talking a little bit before we started about how I was wanting to ask you to come on for a while, like in the very beginning. And I was like, no, we have to wait. We have to wait. We need to have more episodes done. So that way it's like worth her while. And then I came across you from Behind the Emerald Veil
Uh,
podcast with Allie and Mandy.
Love
And
them.
yeah, they're hilarious.
Oh my
Hilarious.
God.
Gabby actually
So
did
good.
an episode with them right before our podcast came out. So we came out in
Yeah.
April, and Gabs, you recorded with them. Was it March or
Back in
April?
April. Yeah, it was April.
Yeah, right before ours came out. And
Amazing.
I heard you on there, and I was like, oh, what is this? Because I've heard a little bit about breath work, but not a whole lot. Oh, so that's what we're talking about today, guys. Kyla is the breathwork queen. So that's why we wanted to have her on. And I remember I had messaged you after I listened to your episode with them because you had said something in there that I feel like is missing a lot, or I just don't hear a lot from practitioners. And that was, if you're going to be doing this work and there is some deeper work, some trauma going on, please use this with a licensed mental health professional, which I feel like sometimes people kind of want to bypass. And so I loved that you really touched on that and the importance of it.
Mm.
So I just really appreciated that. And that's when I was like, yes, like she gets it.
Yeah, thank you. Uh-huh. We'll for sure talk about that. That feels really, really important for lots of reasons.
hmm
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. So guys, we're just going to jump in today. We're not going to do the usual nonsense for 10 minutes. We're just going to get started because I think she's a wealth of knowledge and we want to use every bit of time we can with her.
It's a
So
holiday, to be fair.
can
I have a lot of time right now.
it is a holiday. Yeah. Is it a holiday where you're at? I wasn't sure.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
Okay.
Labor Day, I guess.
hmm Do you
I
guys
don't even
call
know.
it Labor Day or do you guys call it something else?
No, I think we call it Labor Day. I pay
Yeah.
zero attention
Okay.
to holidays and long weekends, so I actually don't. Yeah, we call it Labor Day. Sure we do.
Mm.
Sure we do.
Oh, I live for my long weekends.
Yeah.
I don't get enough of them. So yeah, anytime we have a long weekend, it's
Yeah,
great.
I love them.
So the topic is breath work, and I feel like breath work is almost becoming more known, just more talked about lately. I know I really didn't start hearing about it until this year. I think kind of after my spiritual awakening started and I started diving more into the work. I don't know that I hear a lot about it outside of the spiritual world, just in kind of mainstream. So, can you tell us just what it is? What is breath work?
Yeah, for sure. I also didn't know what the heck it was, to be really clear. I didn't know what it was until I landed in a class. And even then, I think I was still like, what was that? What was that? Um, yeah, to me, the way I describe it is it's a somatic practice that we intentionally choose. Like we breathe all day, every day without thinking twice about it. But when we set an intention and we're actually consciously with a practice um, of our breath, that becomes breath work. And it can look so many different ways. Predominantly, the breath work that I practice and facilitate clients through is called conscious connected breath work. And it's generally like a 60 to a 90-minute practice. And so when I say the word breath work, that's generally what I'm thinking about. And breath of fire is breath work, alternate nostril breathing is breath work, box breathing is breath work, pranayama, like the traditional practices that we would do in a yoga classes, that is also breath work. It's intentional connection with our breath. And so it's vast. It's really vast.
Mm-hmm.
But to me, it's the intention and the conscious choosing of.
Okay. And so what would be, because again, I'm still trying to figure it out. What would be the reason that somebody would consciously choose to practice breath work, like to do this somatic practice? What are going to be some of the benefits of it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So with, let's just say, more traditional, more common breath practices, such as a box breathing or breath of fire or alternate nostril, those are the three that I spoke to. Breath of fire, not so much because it's quite invigorating, but box breathing and alternate nostril breathing are going to be really calming and soothing to our nervous system. So if we are like, who would really benefit? Busy parents, business owners, people who are maybe stuck in traffic driving to and from work all day, working in a big hustle bustle, school teachers. I'm probably going to name like every type of human.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone who's feeling overstimulated, a practice that invites you to slow down and just be present with your body, it's going to be so soothing to your nervous system and remind us that it's actually safe to be right here. It's just safe to be right here. We're so, some of us are addicted to that stimulation, right? We're always in this like, I need to go, 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 go. And I really resonate with that for so many years of my adult life. It was like, go, 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 do, do, do. What else can I do? If I'm not working, I'm dying, basically. It was like, I need to
Yep.
be doing something. My nervous system was so shot and it didn't feel, now this isn't conscious. Consciously, I was like, oh, I'm totally safe in my body.
Yeah.
Subconsciously, it was like, not safe to just be here. And so bringing in those slower, more mindful practices invite our body and our subconscious back into that space where it's like, oh, it's actually okay to be here. And for some of us, that might be foreign. We may have never felt safe to be here based on what happened in our childhood and our lifetime. And so it's a big practice, it's a big practice to just sit for 2 minutes present with yourself. Now,
It is.
right? Like, yeah, and that's we could do a whole podcast on that as well. But, and then breath of fire as an example, like really energizing, like fiery, heat evoking. And so maybe you've just woken up from a nap or you've woken up, from the night and you need to like be ready to go. A breath of fire practice where you're really like big, powerful breaths in and creating some internal heat and getting yourself jazzed up. Also beautiful to bring into like a manifestation practice, like shifting your internal energy. Shifting your energy. Do you need to present something to a group of people and you're a little bit nervous? Drop into a fiery breath practice. Get yourself like shifted energy. And then the conscious connected breath, like the big sessions that I lead, those, I feel like a nice way to explain it is like emotional alchemy, where it's like we're working with bigger pieces and we're inviting those, like bigger parts, those old stories, the old patterns, the beliefs, the stickiness, the fears. We're inviting that to kind of come up so we can actually be with it and alchemize it and move it through so that we aren't limited by whatever's holding us back. I have a girlfriend who comes to breath often and she says it's just my spiritual hygiene. Like once a month, I need like this emotional, spiritual like cleansing and this like reminder of who I am and like what's here. So I think all humans could benefit from it, but various, different reasons for different practices.
Yeah, because as you were starting the list, right, the first thing you said was busy parents. And I was like, oh my gosh, how many people are just busy parents, period, right? And then you add on every other kind
Mm-hmm.
of profession. And even for you,
Yeah.
that this is your job, this is your career, I would imagine that there are still times that you are also overwhelmed, even though your business and task is literally to like be in your body and to help other people. Even for you, I'm sure there's times where you're having to create content. I saw you post something, I think it was yesterday or the day before, and you were talking about having to sit down and do some writing, and right, even just that pressure of, okay, I have to sit down and I have to do this writing, and maybe I have to get it done by this time or by this day.
Mm-hmm.
That is still maybe going to cause some of that
Mm-hmm.
you know, dysregulation in the body, because now you're putting yourself on a time limit. I'm imagining, I might be wrong, but
No, you're 100% right. And it's like, it's so funny. Like, I just referenced that, like, go, go, go energy and
mhm,
how that's been a big part of my healing in the last few years. It's like my biggest life lesson in this lifetime is to learn to be slow, which I think is why I'm facilitating people in that. Um,
mhm,
Even in a really spacious day, as an example, this morning, go to the gym, come home, do the things, have a meditation, make breakfast, have a latte, get on this call, which I was 10 minutes late for, because I didn't take a moment to slow down, double check what I needed. And so, in those moments, even where I'm having like a spacious day, I still
mhm.
will find myself like pushing it. And I'm like, oh, I have 20 minutes to get to the gym and it's only a 15-minute drive. And so I'll do something. And then it's like, oh, no, it's actually, I need to be there in 8 minutes. And
Yep.
and so it's even in those moments, something as simple as, so this is another practice that people can do all the time. Driving, going to the bathroom, I don't care where you are, but noticing when you're in that like kind of like frantic energy, a simple deep inhale, hold it for like
Mhm,
3 seconds, open your mouth and sigh it out. Like, that's
mhm.
breath work. That is a mindful,
Yeah.
connected moment of like, ah. And it's in the exhale, actually, that our nervous system starts to soften. The inhale, if we
Hmm.
think about it, is how we survive by breathing in, by receiving
Mhm,
oxygen. So that's a bit more energizing. It's a bit more like power. There's more power in the inhale. And the exhale really represents it like letting go, releasing, surrendering, the sinking in. So our nervous system will take an extended long exhale as a really good information piece of like, we're okay. So if you're feeling
okay.
heightened, let your exhales
Uh-huh.
be long. Let your exhales be really long and like not forced, just like a,
Mhm.
yeah.
I've heard it explained as kinda like let it fall out of your
Mm-hmm.
mouth, like just let
Yeah,
the breath kind of fall
totally.
out.
Totally.
I'm
Exactly.
wondering, you mentioned, so the inhale is kind of like the invigorating, getting in the energy. The exhale is the, like, it's okay, it's the release. And I know a lot of times there's also, like in box breathing, for example, right? There's the pause. So what is the
Mm-hmm.
pause? What is the purpose of that?
Mm-hmm. So I think different people might have different insights on the benefit of the
Mhm.
pause. And then there's probably going to be like a scientific and a spiritual, like an energetic purpose to the pause. For me, I enjoy the pause as that moment of it's just you. I'm not doing anything. It's the being, right? I'm no longer breathing in. I'm not breathing out. I'm not doing anything. I am being. It's in that moment of
Mm,
like, and that's enough. Like, here I am being, and that's enough. And
okay.
for coming back to that like safety conversation, that might be either really easy for someone, that might be where they thrive, is in that like nothingness, or that might be the hardest part. And so it just invites that curious little like, oh, interesting. I wonder why that. So I really enjoy the pause as that moment of like settling and being before the next exchange, whether it's in or out.
For me, that's definitely the part that I struggle with the most. I start noticing that I start wiggling my toes or I start doing something,
Uh-huh.
especially if I'm doing 4, 7, 8, because I'm holding for so much longer. And yeah, my toes will start going. Something starts moving
Mm-hmm.
because I
Mm-hmm.
can't just be in it. I have a really hard time just being still and being with myself.
Yeah, and that's not uncommon. And so in that, like, can there be an internal dialogue of like, what if I'm okay here? Like, what
Mm-hmm.
if I'm okay? And in those holds, I'll start thinking about just softening everything, like softening my face, like just softening everything. Because in that, like, kind of internal, and I'm going to say panic, it's probably not a panic, but your body's like, I need to do something in
Mm-hmm.
whatever that feeling is. There is a constriction, even if we're not aware of it. So if we can just start to soften really mindfully, that constriction is going to soften, whether you're logically consciously aware of it or not. And I imagine that hold will actually start to feel a bit easier. Just that, like,
Yeah,
yeah,
because I will
internal
be really
melting.
tense too. And I'll
Exactly.
notice it. I'm like, everything is tense. Why am I tense? Like, knock it off. And it takes a while to settle into it
Yeah.
once I'm aware of it.
Yeah. So just maybe next time, just playing with that, like, oh, what if I just softened here? What if I was okay? What
Mm.
if I was okay? Right here.
Yeah.
Just play with that.
Okay.
Maybe.
I had a question, and then I want to hear again, just or not again. I've heard your story, but not
Mm-hmm.
everybody else has heard the story. And then I want to hear how you got started.
Mm-hmm.
But so in I'm a therapist, and so when I am working sometimes with clients who come in really anxious, really overstimulated, overwhelmed, sometimes I have them do a little bit of box breathing or even in during session in the middle of it. Maybe I'll have them do a 4-7-8. I'll have them do something. Sometimes if they're newer, I might just have them just focus on inhale, exhale, and not,
Mm-hmm.
get fancy, which I mean, it isn't even fancy, but I'll just kind of have them
I know what
focus.
you mean.
And so I wonder because I've heard of breathwork sessions, right? You mentioned conscious connected breathwork being like longer.
Mm-hmm.
And I've done some of that before where it's about, 20 to 30 minutes and it can go up to like what, 60 to 90 maybe?
Yeah.
Is there a minimum number of
Mm-hmm.
minutes that somebody would need to be doing the breath work, whether it's the box breathing or just anything in general, for them to get the benefit? Like, does science, or not
Mm-hmm.
even science, but is there something that says it has to be a minimum of 3 minutes to get any benefit? Or is there anything that's said about that?
Yeah, it's so interesting. I just this came up in another podcast I was listening to, and I was just writing about it the other day as well. 5 minutes. So 5 minutes of intentional breath, whether that doesn't it doesn't matter the style, is enough to very clearly shift your energetic state. So if someone's needing to like calm down, and honestly, in the calming down, they might receive that before 5 minutes, but to like really solidify it and anchor it, if they can
Mm-hmm.
commit to that 5 minutes, because let's say that sense of safety comes in at like 2.5 or 3, and then they stop because they're like, oh, I feel it, I feel fine, and then they go right back into heightened emotion. It's that, like, what if I
Mm,
stay, right? Like, I'm just gonna stay with it, anchor that in. It gets to be safe longer. So
longer.
5 minutes is what I'm hearing.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Because I remember seeing some that were like maybe around 5 minutes, and I was thinking, is it enough? Does it
Yeah.
need to be longer? So I wasn't sure.
Yeah,
Okay.
5 minutes of intentional breath is enough to shift your energetic state,
Okay.
which is great because we all
So,
have five
okay,
minutes.
we
Mm-hmm.
do. And sometimes, though, we think we don't. Like, I don't have
Uh-huh.
time to stop for 5 minutes. I have to go, 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 right? I have
Yeah.
dishes to do, have a bed to make, I have dinner to make, I got a kid to bathe, right? We think that that 5 minutes is going to throw off our entire day. And it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't. I mean, we spend probably 10 minutes scrolling on our phone
Mm-hmm.
doing nothing when we could have used half of that to get in alignment and to regulate ourselves, and it's too much, right?
Totally.
Because it's
Yeah, yeah.
uncomfortable. It's hard.
It's uncomfortable. This is it. It's uncomfortable. Being with yourself, being with your feelings, being with the energy and the emotion is uncomfortable.
Mhm. Yeah, definitely.
Mm.
Okay. Gabs, do you have any thoughts. I kind of see like the wheels going, and I see like little connections being made.
Well, it's so at the time of recording, we're in the middle of Mercury retrograde, so for, like, the first 15
Oh
minutes, I didn't see your guys' video, so I was just listening, and I was like, "Yeah," and then I
my
was like, "Oh,
gosh.
I'm so relaxed," and I think it's just your resonance, Kyla. I'm like, "Oh, like, super comfortable over here, even though I'm drinking my coffee and whatnot," but I was just thinking about how when you were describing the breath, when you inhale and exhale, how that reminded me of feminine and masculine, like, the
Yeah.
different, archetypes. So I could
Mm-hmm.
definitely resonate with that. And then I was just
Mm-hmm.
thinking back to like when I first started my spiritual awakening, or when that first occurred, how aside from like acupuncture, breath work was actually one of the main modalities that really helped like almost remove like stagnant energy from my sacral chakra. So
Yeah.
I'm a big fan.
I love hearing that. I love hearing that so much. Can I speak to that?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So yeah, speaking to breathwork and like a spiritual awakening, because we're all spiritual beings. Like we're all already
Mm-hmm.
there. Just are we present to it or not? And breathwork, and so I'm going to focus on the conscious connected. So in these big, more cathartic breath sessions, we're like cleaning house, like we're clearing stuff out. And sometimes it's really peaceful to look at someone, you think, oh, they're having a really restful experience. This is really beautiful. There's still a lot of clearing. And sometimes it's really cathartic and there's lots of like emotion and movement and it's more obvious maybe. Regardless, as the clearing moves and the junk that doesn't serve anymore moves, what's left is just more space. Our channel is clear. So if we're looking to connect to spirit, we're creating that space so that can come in and that exchange can happen. And so it's a beautiful support for people who are curious about deepening their spiritual relationship, connection, knowing, abilities, right? It's clearing that channel. And that's where the spiritual hygiene comes in. It's like, oh, we just got to clear that pipe every now and then.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I love, Gabby, that you were speaking to Kyla's, just her presence and her just I guess her voice and her sound, because that was when I listened to her on Behind the Emerald Veil. I was like, I could listen to her all day
All day.
long. She is
Oh.
so soothing, and she
Yeah.
just has such a good voice to listen to. And your meditations and your breath work that you have on your app, I was like, yeah, I could just listen to her all day, every day.
Oh,
Kyla, I have a question for you.
yes, please.
Do you know your big three in astrology, and do you know where your Mercury's at?
No, can you do that for me?
Yeah,
She could.
yeah. I was so curious. I was like, I wonder where her Mercury's at.
I don't.
Mm.
Astrology is a part that it's so interesting. I'm like fully trusted. I'm like, oh yeah, this
Yeah.
is like written in stone. And I don't understand or know anything about it. But
Mm-mm.
I trust it like I trust that I need oxygen,
Yeah. I
Yeah.
you
love
know?
that.
Yeah.
It's confusing.
I
It's a
know.
lot. I don't know how she knows all these things and how she remembers them, because
It
I still
it
don't know my big three. I know them, but I forget them. And
could
Okay.
you
and I have
could
an
you recite them
astrologer
right now,
sister.
Nicole? Could you?
No, I'm a Cancer sun,
Yes. Yes.
um, Aquarius rising.
Yes. Yep. Yep. You got two.
I forgot the other one.
Sagittarius moon.
Sagittarius
Oh,
moon. See, and
Mhm.
she's quizzed me on this several times,
Yeah.
and I
okay.
still
It's
could
okay.
never.
We'll get it down.
Oh, okay. Now I'm feeling like such a dodo. I did have this done for me once. I mean,
Uh-huh.
I'm a Cancer. I know that.
Hey.
July 13th.
Oh, Cancer queen.
Girl.
That's right, you are.
Oh
Mm-hmm.
yeah, just full of the emotions all the time. Just leave me at
Totally.
All
home.
the
I just want to
time.
be home. There's a
Yep.
Leo in there somewhere, which actually surprises me because I don't feel like I connect to Leo at all. But somewhere in there, there's Leo.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder what the third one is.
I don't know.
Yeah. I'm so curious. And that means you
Mm-hmm.
must have been feeling these retrogrades if you had the Leo and the
Oh
big
yeah.
three like pretty heavily.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah. Oh yeah. Oh
Mm.
It's rough.
yeah.
August.
Yeah, it was something.
It's been rough over here. We've been going through it. We've been going
Uh-huh.
through it over here. the two of us. So
Yeah.
we have the same birthday. So we
Oh,
have a lot of the same stuff.
Yeah.
when's your
Yeah.
birthday?
June 22nd. So
Okay.
more cancer, all cancer queens here.
I love it. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So can you tell us how you got started doing breath work? I
Mhm.
almost don't think that it's that much of a shift from what you were doing before, but what do you think? I mean, and
Mhm.
then you can tell people what you were doing before, but
It's so funny. I think it's such a well, I think it's a shift. Oh God. Yeah, I think it's a shift.
okay.
Okay.
I think because I just still see it as body work, right?
It
Like to me, it's
is.
still body, but a different kind, but it still is focusing on
It
the
is.
body.
Yeah, I was a personal trainer for 15 years and then a yoga teacher for the last 4 of those 15 years. And yeah, with personal training, now I was young when I was like 20 when I started, and was really into like fitness competitions and like working with a supplement company and photo shoots and like traveling and like this whole thing of external looking a certain way and so my clients were all about like I want to look a certain way, and that's mostly what fitness is, wanting to look a certain way.
Mm-hmm.
And I just was finding myself after, I don't know, 8 or 9 years of it, being like, wow, there has to be something more to this. Like, this is this is not okay. And as a trainer, very similar to I think like a hairdresser and yourself as a therapist, like you become a therapist. Like you're hearing all the stories. And so,
Mm-hmm.
I would have a client wanting to shift their body weight and then telling me all of these things in their life that really are just different ways in which they're unhappy and not feeling safe in their life. And I knew that like, it's not their body. It's not the food. It's not the workouts. Like there's something more here. I want to access it. No idea how to access it. Then I found yoga teaching. I was already practicing yoga. And that was a bit of a shift. Like, people would be crying in the middle of a practice. And I was like, okay, we're getting
Mm-hmm.
somewhere. We're getting somewhere. We're getting somewhere. Okay, we're on the right track. And then it was my acupuncturist who, every time I'd go in to see her, she's like, Kyla, you should really come to these breathwork sessions. I host these breathwork sessions every full moon. And I was like, yeah, yeah, yeah. Like, I didn't know what breathwork was. I thought it was box
Mm-hmm.
breathing. I thought it was what I was
Right.
already doing. So in
Mm-hmm.
my like egotistical mind, I was like, I don't need you and your breathwork practices.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, so finally, whatever, I don't know how I ended up going to this breathwork class. And it was so profound. There was maybe 10 or 12 of us in this room. And she led us through this beautiful breath practice. And what happened for me, so she had us like one of the ways we start to move energy any time, but like in breath work is physically actually shaking it out, which is why people shake and dance to move energy. So she had
Mm-hmm.
us, we're lying on our back, we're breathing, shaking energy out. That's all fine. I'm totally there with her. And then she asks the group to start making a sound like an ah, which also moves energy. And so I'm shaking my hands. That feels fine. When asked to make sound, I totally shut down. I completely froze. I like my lip was quivering and there was this intense like self-shame and anger. I was like, what is wrong with you? Everyone else is making sound. Why? Wait, what? Like, what
Mm-hmm.
is wrong with you? Which then, and this is probably in a like 1 minute timeline, which felt like forever. But then there was like, oh, you don't have a voice. Who took your voice? Why do you not have a voice? And then it went into, oh yeah, your mom didn't really speak her voice. Oh yeah, your grandma literally said nothing her whole life. Oh, all the women in my family, no one ever had a voice. And then it went to like, just like globally, where is our voice?
Mm-hmm.
And so at this point, I'm like raging. I'm so mad and sad and like all of this, all of it. I'm just feeling all of it. And then right as she kind of like cued everyone to stop, this little like squeak came out, this like high pitched squeak. And then it was game over, waterworks. I broke down sobbing because in that moment, it was like, it was a full knowing. It was such a knowing in my body that I just broke that chain. Like that no longer, that story of women in my family not having a voice ended in that moment is what I knew happened. And so I'm just a total, I say a total wreck. I wasn't. It was like very empowering and
Right.
beautiful and sad and like grief and like all of these feelings. And then we like carried on the breathwork session and there was joy and there was all sorts of stuff. And at the end of the session, I was one of the last to leave and I just hugged her and I said, "Who's your teacher? How do I do this?" She gave me his name based out of Calgary. I immediately registered for his next training and proceeded to get all my ducks in a row to quit my 15-year career as a personal trainer. And I was like, this is it. This is it. You can't convince me otherwise. This is it. And it's just been it since then, which was now, almost 4 years ago. But it feels like a lifetime. Like I've done this before.
Yeah.
Like I've done this before. This is just a remembering now. It feels so good.
What is the certification process like? Do you remember? I mean, it's been 4 years, but.
Yeah, I remember very thoroughly. Different. So mine was 2 years of training, which I find hilarious. You can become a cop in less time than to become a trauma-informed breathwork facilitator, which I appreciate. I appreciate that so much. Because you're accessing or you have the ability to access really tender, important parts within a person. And if you don't know how to hold that, we've got problems. So I really appreciate that the training was over 2 years. Having said that, there are trainings that you can take in a weekend or in a month or there's because like you said at the beginning, it's becoming really popular. It's becoming trendy. And I had the same beef when I was a personal trainer. I spent like 9 months getting certified. And even that I questioned, like, was that even long enough? You can get trained in a weekend to work with the human body.
Yeah.
That's not okay. It's just not okay. And so breathwork right now is the same. So I fight this, gratitude that it's becoming more known, and also this deep awareness that it just means like I need to be more,
that anybody's going to be able to do it too.
Yeah. And so it's education.
Kyla, I wanted to speak to that because I definitely feel that with respect to just like the industry, like the general spiritual industry that we're in. And we were, our mentor recently said on one of her podcasts that, it is a new industry and there's going to be a lot of people flocking to it, but we're also in a 7-year in numerology. So 2 and 3.
3.
Yeah. 3. 2023. And what that means is like there is a rise in spirituality, but a lot of the charlatans are going to be, coming to light. And I think like the people that have the good intentions behind it, like us in this work, I think we're going to be around for a long time. So I can totally understand because I think about that conversation in my mind pretty often as well.
Yeah. And it's thank you for saying that. And what I feel like this offers people who are seeking the support in whatever they're seeking, it offers them the sense of power to do their research. Like really take ownership as to who you're going to be working with. I don't care if they're your massage therapist, if they're your psychic, if they're your spiritual healer, if they're your breathwork facilitator. I don't care who they are. Do your due diligence, and don't just hire someone because they're good looking or they're popular. Like check. Specifically with breath, do they have trauma training? That's going to be my number one. Do they know how to hold my trauma? Period.
And so with that, you said it was 2 years. So was that because there was a certain number of hours? Like, so for me to become a therapist, right, I needed to have 3,000 hours of experience before I could even try to take a test, and then I still needed to pass that test, and I have
Mhm.
to do certification every year to maintain it. So
Mhm.
was
Mhm.
there a certain number of hours that you need to facilitate a breath work
Yeah.
session towards the, or I guess within those 2 years?
Yeah. So the way our training worked is we had like 5 levels or 5 trainings, and they were each 7 days, 7 day intensive. So like kind of 14-hour days for 7 days.
Mm.
And those were spread out over the 2 years. So five modules over 2 years. And in between each was like you were very much expected to practice. And for the first year, it was practicing like on each other, right? People who were
Mhm.
like in the work, and we weren't going crazy. And then we got to a point where it was okay, you need to have X amount of practice clients who are not like, maybe it's family and friends who really trust you.
Mhm.
Um, and like there was certain readings we had to do. There's this whole like 12-week process, which is actually a really neat process. It's called the presence process. Anyone can do it. It's a book by Michael Brown, specifically around this type of breath work. And it's a 10-week process where you do 2 15-minute breath sessions every day. So morning and night. And then there's like deep inquiry the whole time. It's a beautiful practice, but that was mandatory. Um, yeah. And then we had to, I can't remember how many hours were actually expected, but there definitely was expectations along the way.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's really interesting. I mean, I see as a therapist how beneficial it could be, period. So, especially now, I'm like, oh, what what new certifications can I get? And I've thought about breath work for a while. And I think for me, I want to dive deeper into it as my own practice. But the times that I have done it, I mean, it definitely does bring up
Mhm.
anything and everything.
Mhm.
And it's really interesting. And I just recently did a couple where they paired it with music.
Mhm.
And that I think adds a whole different
Mhm.
layer, especially when it's, music with actual words, because it's usually targeted towards whatever the specific practice is.
Mhm.
And I remember that being like a game changer and just crying, like, what is happening here? But I loved it. It felt so good. It felt so good in the
Mhm.
moment. It felt so good after. So
Mhm.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
I love music. There's definitely always loud music in my breath sessions, and that's a lot of
Mm-hmm.
it's like kind of shamanic or tribal, and then there's some we get a certain part in a breath journey, and you generally know that the heart's starting to open, so then you toss in like a
Mm-hmm.
song with lyrics that just gets you, and
Yeah.
then everyone's like, "What?" And then you bring it back in, and then we
Yeah.
end it. Like there's structure to the playlist.
Mm-hmm.
Um, And yeah, it's like that deep crying. Like, how many of us have been told in our life, like, oh, don't cry, don't cry, don't cry. It's okay, don't cry, don't cry.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
all that's doing is like stuffing everything back in and down. And so crying feels so good. And sometimes it's
Mm-hmm.
not sad. Sometimes it's just like, oh, just like, I don't have to hold that
Mm-hmm.
anymore. It's just that clearing. Like, what a gift. Yeah.
I had that happen to me earlier this week with just like a conversation I was having, and I had been holding things in for a while, and I finally let it out. And I was crying in a way that I don't even remember how long it's been since I've cried that way. Like, it might have been a decade. Like I think back to, you know what? Yeah, I think back when my grandpa passed away, and that's been what, like
Yeah, it's over
15
10 years,
years?
yeah.
Wow.
15 I think that was the last time that I cried in that way, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, like, what is happening?" And then I was at work, and I luckily have my own office, but the walls are kinda thin, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, I hope my sound machine is on outside," and I think when I went out later, it was. So I was like, "Okay, good." Like, nobody was in the office next to me, the sound machine's on, because people would have been like, "What is happening in there? She doesn't have a client in there? Is that her?" Like, just crying by herself, but it felt
Oh.
so good after. I was like,
Mhm.
okay, like I
Mhm.
needed that. I was holding it in, and like now it's gone, and I can move on with my life and my day.
Yeah,
but it was
beautiful.
A lot. It didn't feel very great
In the
in the
moment.
moment.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I wonder what has been like, what might be a story or two, if you can share any, that you've witnessed something really transformational in someone during a session where, like, for you, like, you were able to make that connection very quickly, even though it felt like a lifetime for you when it came to your voice. But what have you seen as far as people practicing and the connections that they're making, and just maybe any transformation that they're having in that session or afterwards?
Yeah. I have three that just came to my mind, and there's plenty. Do I have time to tell three?
Yeah, of
Okay,
course.
Yep.
okay.
We want to hear them.
Okay,
Uh-huh.
so the first one happened in one of my trainings, so with a fellow student. Um, it was so incredible. Okay, so I'm 5'2". He was 6'6", and like a big man. So big man, small woman. And we were the training that we were in, we were deep in this, which is still my favorite module in the whole program, was about our time in utero and birth and how everything uh, leads to today and what's actually happening in utero and okay, so sit down with this
I remember
guy.
this story. This is a good one. I'm glad you're
Oh my
sharing this
god.
one.
And this is the only reason I'm even choosing to share this one is because I know that both of you will be like, oh yeah, this is for sure a thing. It's out there. This is an out there story. So anyone who is like, you might question me, you might think I'm crazy.
Mm-hmm.
That's okay. I welcome that. I was there, I witnessed it. It was a thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I've seen it again since. So this gentleman, we sit down together and I ask what his intention is for the practice, which is always a thing. I always ask, what's your intention? Some people come with them, some people don't. But we were in a training and that was part of it. So what's your intention? And he says, this was so intense. He's like, I really want to, I forget the wording he used, but basically like be with and accept and feel okay with both living and dying. Like, okay. And he said, in this life, like this current life, my parents tried to abort me. And I remember this. Now, pause. I don't know. I didn't ask deeper. I don't know if he remembers that authentically, like organically, just his soul remembers, or if it came to him through an experience or a medicine journey or a meditation or something. But he remembers the attempted abortion. The abortion obviously did not work, and he was born. So he was born into a family that he felt didn't want him. So his whole time in utero, he felt unwanted, unsafe, not worthy, all the things. Then is born, family, we didn't want you, the whole thing. And he's now like 30 something. So many years of holding these deep emotions. So he wanted to reconnect his safety of being alive and being born and being here. So he's breathing and it's beautiful. And I'd watched him through the week of training, and so this part is not uncommon. A lot of like coughing or spitting up, so just spitting into tissue, it's not uncommon. He was someone who did that a lot. And so he was doing that in this practice. I wasn't really thinking much of it because I'd seen him do that plenty of times before. Then he rolls onto his side, kind of into fetal position, and is curling up into fetal position. And I'm still learning at this point. So I'm not aware of really fully what's going on. And thankfully my teacher was like, hey, I want you to pay attention to what's happening here. And so we're having this like little side dialogue, and what's happening is he is, and this happens more times than I think people would think happens, like a reliving of a birth experience. And so he's curling up into fetal position, and he's spitting up and like spitting, and he gets into fetal position. And so I'm guided. So I have someone at his feet to support his feet. My teacher creates the like what would be the vaginal canal at his head, and I embrace him like the womb, like hard, like I hold him in. And he pushes himself out. He pushes off the person who's holding his feet. He goes through me and he goes through my teacher's head or hands. And I'm instructed now to immediately hold him. Like he has just experienced this birthing process again.
Mm-hmm.
So we need to make this really beautiful. So then I'm holding him, and a male like co-student of mine gets beside me to act as the dad. And we're just like, oh my gosh, you're so beautiful. We're so happy you're here. Like, we love you so much. Just like really like so much love, so much love. And he is
Mm-hmm.
sobbing like a baby, like baby cry, like not a man
Yeah.
trying to make baby cry, like baby cry. And we
Right.
just held him and rocked him and loved on him for probably 10 or 15 minutes until he stopped crying, and we laid him down, and he just was in bliss for the whole rest of the session. And then we came out of the session and we got to talk about it. And, he's conscious of the whole thing. And it was beautiful. It was beautiful and wild. But he did that all. Like, he pushed himself out.
Mm-hmm.
He created that safe space. So that was one. That was the first like epic thing I'd ever experienced.
So with that, did you, because you said he was also in the class, so you still had more interaction with him. Did he ever talk about any changes or anything that he noticed after having that experience and kind of going through? Like, did he say, oh, I don't struggle maybe as much with this thought, or just any shifts that he noticed after?
We didn't really get to dive in. Like, it's interesting. We're in such an immersive training. Like, we kind of just like went on to the next thing for like the next
Right.
period of time. But what I can say is he carried himself differently. Like, his face he just looked like a different person.
Okay. So
And
you could see physically see the changes in him, even if he didn't share that. Okay.
Oh yeah, he was like, and his partner was there too, and she was like, wow, like, yeah, whatever just happened, yes.
Wow.
That was one. The other one's kind of fun and spicy, and I like this one a lot. I had a young woman. I had a young woman who had never done breath work, had done a lot of therapy. She'd been in a lot of therapy. Had some tough stuff in her life for sure, and spoke to never experiencing an orgasm. Didn't even know what it felt like. Didn't even know what that kind of pleasure felt like. Then we talked about it a little bit and didn't really get into it too deep. Talked about the relationship she was in that was with an older man who was not maybe a great partner for her. And we talked for a long time, much longer than I would generally talk. We almost missed breathing. We talked for so long, and she's like, no, I want to breathe, even if it's just for a little bit. So we got into breath. And to witness this young woman like drop into her body so quickly, and through just like being in her body and breathing and just allowing, like, Gabrielle, you speak about like sacral energy and like clearing that out. There was this really beautiful like rocking and rolling happening in her hips, and then her breath started to change, and I just was right there with like really affirmative, like, can't remember what I was saying, but basically like, my pleasure is welcome. Like, I'm so safe in my pleasure, and this, like, yes, my body knows exactly what to do, and I trust my body, and and she fully climaxed and had like her first orgasm solely like thanks to her own being, and so speak about like empowering, not needing to seek that externally, and to know that she isn't broken, and that she like has it all, and to just for her to feel that sense of pleasure in a time where her life was causing her a lot of pain. And that was profound. And what was for me mostly was like, I just met this woman 3 hours ago, and she feels safe enough to allow herself to go there. Wow. Like, what a gift. What an honor that is. So that was a really fun one.
Because that is such a vulnerable thing, right? Like an orgasm, even in partnership. Like, I'm married, and even sometimes it's like, and so to do that, with somebody in the room with you, and like almost like you said, like encouraging it, like that has to be just so vulnerable.
so vulnerable. And
Mhm.
in our, you know, my teacher would say, like, this is not uncommon. Like, people will climax. Like, you'll meet your deepest level of pleasure and sometimes your deepest level of pain in these practices. It's whatever your subconscious is holding.
Mm.
Whatever your subconscious is ready to release is going to come out. If you've created a safe enough container in your being, it's going to come out. It's beautiful. Let it come out.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, I've had people climax in my training. I remember always listening, being like, man, that sounds like such a good time. I don't think I could ever allow myself to do that in this group.
Yeah. Yeah.
You've
Mhm.
seen
Yeah,
it all.
I would be too afraid of
Mhm.
like the voice thing too, right? Like, nope, no
Yeah.
one can hear. Like, I need to be silent, and
Yeah.
yeah,
Mhm.
The whole
I
can of
think that would
worms
be
to open up, right?
mhm.
Like, who taught us to
Definitely.
be silent? Yeah.
Who know? Our mothers apparently.
Well,
And their mothers, right? Like
yeah,
it just the lineage just
yeah, yeah.
mhm.
She's a deep one. The last one
Mhm.
is she's a breath client who's become a dear friend and has lived her whole life. She's in her 40s, her whole life in multiple different layers of pain, disassociation to her body, lots of autoimmune disorders, like just a real disconnect from her body. And she was in a group session with me, and her share at the end, and this would have been one where to look, it didn't seem like anything profound was happening, which doesn't mean anything actually, but
Mhm.
sometimes you have a bit of an idea as to what might be going on. I had no idea with this session, and at the end she said, for the first time in my life, she says, I can always kind of feel energy like flowing through my like throat and my heart and into my belly, but it stops at my sacral. It stops at my pelvis, and my legs are like dead. Like, I just don't feel anything in my legs. I never have. And so there was sexual trauma there, and digestive
Mhm.
um, disease, for lack of better word. So there was a lot of stuff stuck there. And she says, my legs are vibrating. She's like, energy is now completely, for the first time in my whole
Oh.
life, moving all the way through, and I can feel my body, and I can feel my pelvis, and I can feel my bum, and I can feel my legs. And I feel like,
Mhm.
for the first time in my life, like a complete being. I can feel myself. And, some people might hear, oh, she felt energy in her whole body. Great. That was profound for her, like profound.
Mhm.
So
Yep.
who are we to judge what's a big deal and what's not? Um, and that's in an hour. It's in an hour.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's in an
Where these
hour.
big shifts can be made in such a short amount of time, and you've talked about, people that have maybe been in therapy forever, and I don't necessarily think that, everybody like therapy is always the answer. I think therapy helps, and I think that combining it with these other pieces, right? Especially so my own personal therapist, she is doing a lot of training in like somatic work. So I think for her, she said it was going to be, and it sounded like it was a few years, the whole process to get trained in this new somatic. I forgot what she called it, but it is definitely somatic work. It's a lot of
Mm-hmm.
body work that she's been doing.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think that it needs these other layers also incorporated into it, because therapy is very logical,
Mm-hmm.
and you need more than that. Like talk
Mm-hmm.
therapy, and I'm a therapist, and I'm going to say that like talk therapy isn't always the best. Like talk therapy is not necessarily it. You need to combine it with other things. You need to
Mm-hmm.
combine it with some kind of additional work, whether that's like EMDR or
Mm-hmm.
hypnosis or breath work. Something else is needed. You
Mm-hmm.
can't just talk about your problems. Like
Yeah.
you can't. And I'm a therapist, and I'm
Yeah.
going to say you can't just talk about it.
I really appreciate you saying that, because I agree, and I think talk therapy is really important too, and for people
Mhm.
connecting to their voice, like, oh, I actually
Mhm.
get to be heard. I don't have to make stories up.
Mhm.
My truth can be
Right.
heard, and then that recognition that the stories live here, but the experiences live here.
Mhm.
The knowledge lives here, but the wisdom lives
Right.
here. And so, can we get them working together? Because
Mhm.
if all we're doing is talking about it, we stay in the story loop. We just stay in
Yep.
the story loop. And for some people
Right.
too, it's like, I've never been heard. So I've never been honored in my victim mentality. I'm going to sit with someone who's going to
Mhm.
just honor that, yeah, I had something bad done
Yeah,
to me. And broop, broop,
and
broop,
it will
broop.
be honored.
Oh,
Yeah, but
yeah,
at the
has
same
to be.
time, now it's like, okay, now what are we gonna do with this, right?
Yeah.
Because the body remembers, the body keeps a score, right? All of those
Mhm.
things, like, okay, so
Mhm.
now we need to shift this. Like,
Mhm.
what are we gonna do with this so that way you're not experiencing this trauma, this incident the same way, so your body can respond to it differently so that you're not constantly overwhelmed and in fight or flight, freeze, whatever it is. Like you need to we need to move this. We need to figure out how to do something with it for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
Kyla, I have a
Yeah,
question
I
for you.
Yeah.
So you had mentioned that you were a personal trainer prior to doing this, and
Mhm.
you've obviously, since transitioned to being a breathwork practitioner and administrator and all the things. And so I used to teach fitness classes as well. And I realized like, the transition, like the connection to the body, like it's definitely been like a reoccurring theme for me this year. And have
Mhm.
you personally noticed just like how your body has changed as well, incorporating breathwork into your practice, even from like a visual standpoint? Because
Mhm.
I think if anything, since I've been, an intuitive astrologer and like actually been seeing clients and stuff, like I have just noticed this profound connection of like how my body physically looks now
Mhm.
reading energy. And so
Ah,
I just I'm curious about your takeaways.
that's such an interesting question. Thank you for that. What I've noticed, I have two things that come to my mind. The first thing that came to my mind is, and this started to shift when I started really deepening my yoga practice, was caring a lot less about what my body looked like and
Mm.
honoring more so what it could do and how it held me and served me. And that has deepened with breath work. Like acknowledging that my body holds everything that I
Mhm.
need.
mhm,
It holds so much more than a butt or biceps or abs. But, like there's so much more to
mhm,
this body. And then what I've also noticed in this is interesting. So, this is an interesting notice for me in the last like 6 months. And it's where I have, okay, a little bit of like personal info for me. I left a relationship that was loving and sweet and kind and totally not my relationship, like
mm,
not for me, and have since stepped into like my life person. And
mhm,
the safety in that and in that transitional time was a huge practice and process of me stepping into my like really, really following my gut, following my intuition, like really following my feminine wisdom. And in that process, what I've noticed is my tummy bloat that I didn't know
Mhm.
was a tummy bloat is gone. And it's like the safety, the like
interesting.
Yep.
protection that was around my low belly that I always thought was just like, oh, I just always kind of look a little bit pregnant. Oh no,
Mhm.
that was just protection. That was just protection.
Wow.
And I'm now,
Yep.
okay, yeah, I'm now
Yeah,
safe.
I can relate.
Okay. It's so wild. And like,
It's
it's
Mhm.
so
actually
wild.
like spurring this thought of like, oh my gosh, how many women are walking around with what they think is like excess fat on their tummy and they're just
Yeah.
actually not in safety.
Yeah.
Mm. That's so interesting. Yeah, there's it's the more and more you like dive into just the work, it's not just
It's like,
yeah, my mind is constantly being blown
mhm,
with like the energy and how it affects this and that and even physically and pains and aches and all of those things. Um
mhm,
I had one more question, and I don't know how much this would tie in, but it was something that kind of came up, and then I want you to share with us where people can find you and what you offer.
mhm.
And I don't know much about this in general, period, but I'm hearing a lot about DMT,
Ah.
and and I still don't know what it is because it's kind of hard to I think even find information about it. I think it's one of those subjects that is kind of blocked maybe. And I remember seeing that you can maybe do types of breathing to release DMT. Have you heard of that?
Ooh.
I had you try it one day, Gabby. I made you do it.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
I was
And
like,
then I
record
stopped.
yourself doing it and send it to me.
It looked like an exorcism, honestly.
Yeah,
It was
so
wild.
that's why I'm kind of like, is this a thing? Like, what is DMT? Is DMT breathing a thing? Like, have you heard of it? Do you advise against it? Just what are your thoughts on it? Because I don't know much about it.
Okay, so DMT, I'm someone who knows way more than me is gonna be like, oh my God, she's just ruining this whole thing. But first of all, the reason we can't really find much about it is because with DMT release, we become like heightened, aware, very conscious of all of the subtleties, like ayahuasca, psilocybin, like plant medicines that bring us into our wisdom. That's DMT release, and they don't want us there. They don't want us to know that. Period. Like, again, we could do another podcast on that. And so, of course, it's hard to find information on that. Deep breath work, like conscious connected breath work. And when I say conscious connected breath work, people might also know clarity breath work, rebirthing breath work, circular mouth breathing breath work, holotropic breath work. We're all talking the same thing. Yeah, you can release natural DMT in your brain. And so I've had plenty of people in breath sessions. I had a gentleman at my house the other day. He was just in Costa Rica working with iboga, like another psychedelic medicine. And he's like,
I've heard of that too.
Okay. I've had people say psilocybin, ayahuasca, and iboga ceremonies, which are very powerful medicines, that breathwork has given them way more than that. And what I love about that, now I love plant medicines. Like, I thank you for plant medicines and the wisdom that they carry. But what a gift to have that access point right here without needing any of that. So yeah, you can access natural occurring DMT in your brain in a deep breathwork practice. You can. And you don't have to like try. You could just be in a practice and start to access those points. Sometimes conscious connected breathwork for people is very visually psychedelic. Yeah. Very visually psychedelic. Some people journey into past lives. Like, I've had people recount past life stories. I've had past life experiences in a breathwork journey. Oh yeah, that was another really cool experience. Like, it's a whole rabbit hole.
Yeah.
Of really cool things.
That brought up another question. Would you, or have you seen, so you mentioned like psilocybin, so we'll just stick with that because I think my understanding is like ayahuasca, it's like a thing, it's like a ceremony, like it has to be kind of done somewhere over a period of whatever, whereas like with psilocybin, right, you can get a pill and do it at home or whatever the case is. So with that, are there recommendations either for or against having a breathwork session while on psilocybin, or is that kind of, what are the thoughts on like merging the two?
Great question. Merging the two with a microdose, beautiful, amazing. Merging the two with like a full journey macro dose, I don't know if you can actually maintain the breath.
Right.
But what's really interesting, so I'm going to give a little hit. Do I have time? Do you care if I go a little bit?
Yeah,
over?
No, yeah. We sometimes, yeah, if it's good, we go over.
Okay. So a little history on breathwork. So in the 60s, there's a doctor named Stanislav Grof. Stan Grof is generally the easiest way to say his name. And he was working in psychedelic assisted therapy, mostly LSD, a little bit psilocybin as well. And he was working with predominantly war vets at that time and working on trauma healing. And so the reason he was using psychedelics is it shifts people into that altered state of consciousness, into that subconscious space where they can access the parts that are really, really easily stuffed down in the conscious logical mind. So altered state, they're accessing those parts. He's having incredible results. And then the 70s come in and the government makes it all illegal.
Yep.
And he then needs to find this alternate way to like get back to his work. And what he noticed when his clients were in that altered state of consciousness is they would all breathe in this rhythmical way which is the way we breathe in conscious connected breath. It's this
Mm-hmm.
like big full inhale and surrendered exhale. It's like filling and releasing like a jellyfish.
Mm-hmm.
And so he thought, okay, well, let's just explore the breath. And sure enough, the breath was enough to shift his patients into that altered state of consciousness to continue his trauma work. And so that to me I always go back to that as a reminder that our body knows how to breathe in this way. Our body wants to breathe in this way.
Mm-hmm.
It's the way we breathe when we first enter the world, like a little infant, if anyone gets to watch an infant
Mm-hmm.
breathe, or a puppy. It's also how we'll breathe when we take our last breath. It's this like complete surrender. Like I got
Mm-hmm.
nothing. I'm not gripping onto anything here. It's just this like total
Mm-hmm.
surrendered state. And so if you were to journey with a full dose of psilocybin and like really have an experience, I actually, now I've never paid attention to my breath when I journey because that's the last thing I care about. I imagine we're breathing in that way anyway.
Mm.
Right? Because
Okay.
we're in that subconscious space. We're not here. We're here. And so we really are in this like, So I absolutely, yes, microdose psilocybin, breathwork, totally. Macro, I don't think you need to. Someone else might disagree with me. But to me, like a breathwork journey is already potent, and then a psilocybin journey is already potent. And I don't know if they necessarily need to go together.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, just something I was kind of wondering about when you were talking about it.
Yeah.
Well, where can people find you? What do you offer? Go ahead and let the people know.
Let the people know. Most active on Instagram. So the sacred essentials, sacred underscore essentials. My website, sacredessentials.net. Those are really the two places. This is coming out September. Is that what we said?
Yeah.
Later
Yeah,
September?
in a couple weeks.
Yeah, so September 25th, I'm going to be running a 21-day free breathwork journey. It's called Breathe With Me. I did it in the spring. It was such a blast. I'm going to do it again. So that will be coming out very, very soon. And I will have a link for you if you want to like share that out. It's free. People can join.
Yes,
it's going to be
we'll
held on
put
Facebook.
everything in the show notes.
Beautiful. And then, my community inside the essentials is my online membership where we breathe together, we meditate together, we practice yoga, movement, we have full moon rituals, we have guest speakers, we ecstatic dance, we do these breath journeys twice a month. We have a really active, beautiful community. We stay connected on WhatsApp. It's like, I just think it's the greatest, and that's there as well. And I'll send over like a special like coupon code or discount code for your people.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah.
We love a deal.
Yeah.
Don't we all?
Thank you.
Love deals.
Yeah. And so what is in your membership? So you mentioned yoga. Oh, and that was another question I forgot to ask. Let me ask you that real quick. So I in your membership app, anytime there was like meditation or breath work, you would say you would recommend certain oils. And what is the benefit of someone using an oil in meditation or in breath work?
Yeah, so essential oils and plants in general, and I'm going to be a bit of a stickler here. In terms of essential oils, I'm going to request if you're using them really intentionally that you're positive that they're pure. There's a mass majority of synthetic oils. Most of them are. So just really, really, I use doTERRA oils.
I love doTERRA.
Yeah, I do too. I used to work for them. I don't anymore. So I'm not like trying to pitch anything here, but their quality is incredible. And they work with our limbic brain. So they bring us into the space of memory and emotion. And plants are brilliant, brilliant. And they know how to work with our body. And so as an example, if someone is looking to have a really grounding, maybe they're moving through some grief and they're wanting to have just like a really, really sweet, gentle meditation or breath, I might suggest something for the heart. So maybe like rose or a geranium, or maybe something more grounding. So maybe a tree oil or something like vetiver, like frankincense, something like really rooty and earthy. to just like hold them in that. And for me, essential oils, yes, there are plenty of therapeutic reasons and ways to use them, but it's also like I have one here. What do I have? Jasmine, another good one for the heart. Like it's just the ritual practice of like taking a moment. Okay, I'm gonna be with that. I'm gonna like take a moment to smell it. Smells so good, by the way. And
I love
just,
the smell of jasmine.
oh, it's so good. Like where does your body need this? Like just it's just that moment of connection, right? Just that moment of connection. But from an actual like I'm smelling it and my limbic brain is activating. So there is actually stuff happening on top of even you just enjoying it.
So I think that was always my wonder. It's like, is it just that I like the way this smells or this smells good, but it is actually activating something in the body and internally in the brain? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It hits your olfactory bulb, which sits like kind of like back here somewhere in your sinuses, near your sinuses. And that triggers the limbic. And the limbic brain is our memory and our emotions. So I don't know. I always think of this like, maybe your grandma made banana bread and that smell of banana bread like always brings you back, or you smell your high school boyfriend's cologne, right? Like Old Spice, and you're like, oh my God, like you're right back there. Your olfactory bulb has picked up on that smell and your limbic system is like, oh my God, memory. That's what's happening.
Yeah. I mean, I think for me, so much of my memory is tied to sense and to like sense for sure would probably be my number one, and like music. So much of my memory is tied to those two things for sure.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's what essential oils do. It doesn't just smell good, but it's actually doing something.
Actually doing a thing.
Internally. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Good to know. Okay. Well, thank you so much, Kyla. Was there anything else? Like, did we miss anything? Anything that you think would be important?
I don't think so. If we did, I'll send it over and we can pop it in show notes or whatever we do.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely, guys. Take a look in the show notes for how to follow Kyla on Instagram. Definitely check out the Breathe With Me, the 21 days. That's what it's called, right? Breathe With Me?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. And that's going to start, you said September 25th?
September 25th for 21 days, whatever that equals this out to, sometime in October.
Okay. And that'll be, you said 21 days of breath work. How long are the sessions usually about?
Good question. So last time I didn't let anything go longer than 15 minutes. And that gave us time for like little hellos and like a little bit of interaction. The breath practice is probably like 5 to 8 minutes.
Guys, we can do that. Everybody gets at least a 10 to 15 minute break at work. And will these be things that are done only live, or will there be a recording or something where people can do it like on their lunch break or?
Yeah, so it's going to be held in a Facebook group, and so every live is just saved in there, so you can just go back and catch them. Yeah.
Oh, okay. We should need to do that, Gabby. We need to check it out.
I was like,
we need some breath work in our lives.
Get on in there.
Okay.
I haven't posted the link yet, but I will.
Okay, perfect. Okay, guys, that's all we have. Thank you again, Kyla. Everybody go check her out. And we'll see you guys next time.
Lots of love.
Bye.
Bye.